And the House January 6th committee is preparing for its final hearing today. It's expected to expose new evidence, including new information on then-President Trump's state of mind. This as we get a new twist in the Mar-a-Lago documents investigation. The Washington Post reports a Trump employee claims to have received direct orders from Trump to move boxes of documents ahead of the FBI search. Chief Washington correspondent Jonathan Karl has the latest.
One of Donald Trump's own employees at Mar-a-Lago has been cooperating with the Justice Department, according to a new report in the Washington Post. The Post reports the employee told federal investigators that after Donald Trump received a subpoena for government documents back in May, the former president specifically requested the documents be moved. According to the Post, security camera footage from Mar-a-Lago obtained by the FBI corroborated the employee's description of events.
Hey everyone, Dr. John here. So what just happened? 2 document scandals just landed simultaneously, and the combined weight has senior Democrats demanding immediate removal. Not impeachment proceedings, not the ballot box now. The first, classified secrets tied to Trump's private business empire that prosecutors say establish clear criminal motive. The second,
Post reports that the employee initially denied handling any sensitive documents. But during a second interview, presented with the new evidence, the witness reportedly changed their story dramatically, describing moving the boxes at Trump's request. ABC News has not confirmed the Post reporting. The report raises questions of whether Trump obstructed justice and whether he tried to hide documents that federal officials had asked to be returned, documents that he had taken from the White House after he left office. In August, FBI agents executed a search warrant of Mar-a-Lago and seized more than 30 boxes of documents, including over 100 government documents marked classified.
And Jonathan Karl joins me live now for more on this. John, how is former President Trump responding to this report?
Diana, a spokesperson for the former president reacted to the report, although I wouldn't quite call it a response. Put out a statement to the Washington Post initially that instead of directly responding to the specifics of the report, attacked the investigators, accusing the Department of Justice of, quote, dangerous political interference, but really nothing on the specifics of this report.
Now, while all this is happening, the House January 6th committee is also set to hold its final hearing today. So what can we expect on that front, John?
the DOJ stands accused of suppressing over 50 pages of FBI interviews with a woman who alleges Trump sexually abused her as a minor. Together, members of Congress are putting their names on a statement that this is no longer a political crisis. It's a national security emergency. Let those two realities settle beside each other.
Diane, this will be a closing argument. There are no live witnesses, but they will present basically their summation, pointing to what has been a central theme during all of these hearings so far, that Donald Trump is the person responsible for what happened. They will make the argument using the sound from the depositions that all the witness depositions they've done over the course of the past several months, that Donald Trump set in motion the events that directly led to the attack on the Capitol, and that once that attack started, Donald Trump knew what was going on and did nothing to stop it.
Now, the committee has heard from several key players in Trump's orbit since their last hearing. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, former Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, Ginny Thomas, the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, the list goes on. But they have not interviewed the former president himself. Why not?
Classified national security documents retained for personal business enrichment. FBI interviews containing allegations of the sexual abuse of a child deliberately withheld from public release. Both involving the identical institution. Both involving the identical pattern of document manipulation. Both landing in the hands of congressional investigators within days of each other. The eruption now consuming Capitol Hill is not political theater manufactured for cameras.
That's a great question. It's a really good question, because you have heard members of the committee, including Vice Chair Liz Cheney, suggest that Mike Pence should appear before the committee, and strongly suggest that Donald Trump had a responsibility to come before the committee and to answer questions. But here's the thing. They haven't subpoenaed him, but they haven't even invited him. There's been no formal invitation to the former president to come before the committee. Why? Or is it something that they're still considering at this late date. Very good questions. I think part of the calculation here is that if Donald Trump came before this committee, he would use it as a platform to spread disinformation and not directly answer questions. But look, it's a really good question given what Liz Cheney and others have said in the past, strongly implying that they would ask him to testify.
All right, Jonathan Karl, we will keep an eye on it for us. I know you will too. Thank you.
It is the authentic sound of elected representatives reading these documents and reaching the conclusion that the situation has accelerated beyond what normal political mechanisms were designed to process. I want to be absolutely transparent with you about what is documented and what remains alleged, because this narrative involves claims of extraordinary gravity, and you deserve to understand precisely where the boundary between confirmed fact and unproven accusation sits.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us. Today, President Biden became the first sitting president to speak during a Sunday service at Atlanta's historic Ebenezer Baptist Church, where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once served as pastor. Speaking to parishioners, the president reiterated a theme he's called on before: redeeming the soul of America.
A dream in which we all deserve liberty and justice. And it's still the task of our time to make that dream a reality, because it's not there yet.
But in our nation's capital, the president faces a political nightmare. This weekend's disclosure that more classified documents had been found is powering Republican plans for investigations. CBS's Skylar Henry is at the White House tonight with the latest developments on that. Skylar, good evening.
Hey, Jerika, good evening to you. Well, questions are still swirling here in Washington about the handling or mishandling of classified materials 1 day after the White House says 5 more pages were discovered.
The Jack Smith memorandum is authentic. It was transmitted to Congress, and its language regarding business motive is documented, specific, and now permanently embedded in the official congressional record. Representative Jamie Raskin's account of how this document was accidentally surrendered is on the record and uncontested. The Epstein document suppression allegations originate from Representative Robert Garcia, the ranking Democrat on the House.
Any more classified documents?
President Joe Biden ignored questions while boarding Air Force One Sunday, as the drumbeat grows louder for him to answer for the classified documents discovered at his Delaware residence. On Saturday, White House attorney Richard Sauber said the additional pages were found on Thursday and given to the Justice Department. The discovery came hours after Attorney General Merrick Garland appointed former U.S. Attorney Robert Hur as special counsel. White House officials maintain they're handling the legal matters by the book, but House Republicans have launched an investigation of their own into how this happened, asking the White House for visitor logs from the Wilmington residence and pouncing on what they call a double standard compared to the DOJ's probe into former President Trump.
The hypocrisy here is great. We're very concerned about a lack of transparency.
What's real concerning to me is how justice is applied, and is it applied equally?
Democrats note while there are similarities in terms of the mishandling of documents, the scale and scope are different, in addition to the willingness of President Biden to turn over what was found.
There was no effort to hold on to them, no effort to conceal them, no effort to obstruct the Justice Department's investigation. All of that is a very sharp contrast to Donald Trump's handling of the situation.
Skylar Henry joins us from the White House. On another topic, Skylar, the U.S. is expected to hit its debt limit this Thursday. How will the White House and new Congress plan to address that threat?
Yeah, well, Speaker McCarthy was asked about that earlier today. He said he was looking forward to negotiations with President Biden, but also renewed his calls to cut spending, which is a non-starter for this White House that said that the debt limit should be raised without conditions. However, the Treasury Department can keep the country afloat until at least the early summer.
Oversight Epstein panel, who asserts that the Department of Justice withheld more than 50 pages of FBI interviews from the public release despite an archive manifest that proves those pages exist. These are grave and specific allegations from a sitting member of Congress entrusted with oversight responsibility for precisely this subject matter. The underlying allegation of sexual abuse against Trump involving a minor has not been adjudicated in any court proceeding. We are reporting the allegation as it appears within the document suppression claim because that claim is being advanced by an elected official operating in an official oversight capacity, not because the allegation has been proven. What has been proven and documented is that the pages exist according to the manifest and that they were absent from the public release. What those pages contain and whether their suppression was intentional constitute the questions the oversight investigation is now actively pursuing. With that essential context established, let us examine what these documents actually signify and why their simultaneous emergence is generating demands for immediate removal. The Smith Memorandum narrative begins with an internal prosecutorial document authored by Jack Smith's team, a progress memo describing the condition of the classified documents investigation at that stage. That memo rested undisturbed inside Justice Department files for years. Then Trump's allies within the department went excavating through internal records, searching for material they could weaponize against Jack Smith prior to a congressional hearing. They were hunting for anything that might discredit the prosecutor, anything that could bolster the narrative that his investigation represented politically motivated overreach. And during that frenzied search, they handed Congress a memorandum that characterized Trump's motive for retaining classified documents in language more devastating than anything prosecutors could have articulated in a courtroom. The memo states explicitly that Trump possessed classified documents pertinent to his business interests, establishing a motive for retaining them. One file carried sensitivity so extreme that only 6 officials across the entire government received authorization to view it during Trump's presidency, 6 human beings, and Trump kept it at Mar-a-Lago in a golf resort bathroom, accessible to anyone who happened to wander through. Prosecutors declared they possessed proof beyond a reasonable doubt that business interest constituted the motive for keeping it there. Representative Raskin's reaction upon examining the memo was instantaneous. He observed that Trump's own Department of Justice allies had conducted a frantic search to locate damaging material on Smith and instead accidentally delivered to Congress damning evidence of Trump's own conduct. That is not partisan interpretation. That is what the documentary record demonstrates occurred. Then superimposed upon this revelation arrives the Epstein document narrative. Representative Garcia, seated on the House Oversight Epstein panel, asserts that when the Department of Justice released its Epstein files, more than 50 pages of FBI interviews were missing from the public release. Missing not because they never existed, but because an archive manifest, a document cataloging the contents of the files, confirms those pages exist. And Garcia states those missing pages contain FBI interviews with a woman who alleges Trump sexually abused her as a minor. Those pages, according to Garcia, were withheld, not misplaced through administrative error. Withheld from a public release, the Department of Justice had pledged would be comprehensive. And the same Department of Justice that withheld those pages is the identical Department of Justice whose allies accidentally handed Congress the Smith Memorandum while attempting to shield Trump from scrutiny. The same institution, the same pattern of document decisions that protect the same individual. 2 separate document categories, one pattern of institutional behavior, and it now sits before Congress under examination by oversight committees, generating demands for accountability that are moving with greater velocity than the White House can counter. Let us descend deeper into every layer of this narrative because the business motive memorandum and the Epstein document suppression each warrant detailed examination independently, and the connections between them and between both of them and everything else simultaneously convulsing this administration produce a portrait more alarming than any individual component suggests in isolation. There exists the counterintelligence dimension of the business motive memorandum. There exists the cover-up pattern dimension connecting these document decisions to broader Department of Justice conduct under Trump-aligned leadership. There exists the Iran connection, where a president potentially compromised by classified documents linked to his business interests is concurrently issuing civilization-level threats regarding conflict in the Middle East. And there exists the political dimension where these revelations are landing atop impeachment articles, Supreme Court defeats, electoral reversals, and military criticism to create a cumulative image of a presidency in collapse. We shall examine each carefully because each layer carries significance. Begin with the counterintelligence dimension of the business motive memorandum because this aspect receives treatment as a legal narrative when it constitutes a national security narrative of the highest magnitude. The memo states Trump retained classified documents pertinent to his business interests. Contemplate what that signifies from a counterintelligence perspective. The United States intelligence apparatus collects classified information concerning foreign governments, foreign leaders, foreign economic conditions, foreign military capabilities, foreign business environments, and foreign security dynamics. That information bears classification because its disclosure could compromise intelligence sources and methods, alert foreign governments to American knowledge of their activities, and undermine American national security and foreign policy objectives. A president who retains that information after departing office for business purposes represents far more than a records management complication. He constitutes a counterintelligence vulnerability because foreign intelligence services and foreign business competitors and foreign governments with interests adverse to American interests would demonstrate extraordinary interest in ascertaining what classified information that President accessed and might be utilizing to inform his private business decisions. An individual known to possess classified information entangled with private business interests represents a classic counterintelligence target, not necessarily because they intend to share secrets, but because they have manufactured a situation where those secrets intertwine with private financial interests in configurations that render them susceptible to pressure, to compromise, to the subtle forms of leverage that foreign intelligence services specialize in applying. That constitutes the blackmail vulnerability that counterintelligence professionals reference when they state a president who hoards classified documents for business purposes functions as a walking security exposure. And that vulnerability does not diminish in seriousness when the same president issues civilization-level threats regarding Iran while conducting military operations that every intelligence service globally monitors with intense attention. Now examine the cover-up pattern because two instances of Department of Justice document manipulation, one accidental and one apparently deliberate, does not represent coincidence. It represents a pattern, and comprehending that pattern is essential to understanding what type of institution the Justice Department has become under Trump-aligned leadership during this second term. On one side, Trump's Department of Justice allies excavate through files to assault Jack Smith and accidentally deliver Congress the most damaging prosecutorial document regarding Trump's classified documents conduct ever made public. On the other side, the Department of Justice releases the Epstein files, yet more than 50 pages of FBI interviews containing allegations against Trump are absent from the release despite a manifest confirming their existence. Both decisions, the frantic search that backfired catastrophically and the strategic withholding that Representative Garcia now publicly identifies, reflect an institution making document determinations based on what shields Trump rather than what serves the public interest or satisfies legal obligations. That institutional corruption, the transformation of the Justice Department from an institution serving the rule of law into an institution serving one person's political and legal interests, supplies the context rendering both document scandals so alarming, because it signifies you cannot trust Department of Justice document releases to be complete. You cannot assume what they surrender represents everything that exists. You cannot presume the manifest and the actual release correspond. And when you cannot trust the institution designated as the guardian of legal accountability, the question of what else is being withheld and why becomes genuinely urgent. Now connect this to the Iran conflict, because the connection is specific and grave and almost entirely absent from mainstream coverage of this narrative. Trump is presently conducting military operations in the Middle East, issuing civilization-level threats, generating impeachment articles, receiving criticism from retired admirals, while the Supreme Court strips away his economic leverage instruments. And he is executing all of this while, according to the Smith memorandum, he may have retained classified documents connected to his business interests, including potentially documents related to Iran. The Bedminster recording, which we have examined extensively, captures Trump describing a highly confidential Pentagon war plan concerning an attack on Iran. That recording and the business motive memorandum originate from the identical investigation. This raises a specific and alarming question. Was Trump retaining classified material about Iran for business purposes? And is the individual presently issuing civilization-level threats regarding Iran doing so with knowledge derived partially from classified intelligence he improperly retained for private purposes? That question cannot receive definitive resolution with publicly available information, but it constitutes precisely the category of question that counterintelligence professionals and congressional oversight investigators are now pursuing. And the fact that the question can be posed credibly based on documented facts itself represents a national security concern, to which the demands for immediate removal are responding. Now examine the Epstein document suppression specifically because the allegations involved are sufficiently grave to require careful and precise treatment. Representative Garcia, as the senior Democrat on the House Oversight Epstein panel, states the missing pages contain FBI interviews with a woman alleging Trump sexually abused her as a minor. That is an allegation. It has not been proven in any court. Trump has denied allegations of this nature, but the specific claim Garcia advances that the pages exist, that the manifest confirms their existence, and that they were withheld from a public release the Department of Justice pledged would be comprehensive, that specific claim regarding document suppression constitutes an official congressional allegation now entered into the record and actively pursued by the oversight investigation. And the political and moral gravity of that allegation, combined with the national security concerns raised by the business motive memorandum, is what propels the most serious removal demands from congressional Democrats. Because if both sets of allegations ultimately receive substantiation, you confront a president who retained national security secrets for private business enrichment and whose Justice Department suppressed evidence of allegations involving the sexual abuse of a minor. Those are not individual legal complications manageable through normal legal proceedings. They constitute, in the assessment of the members demanding immediate removal, disqualifying conduct rendering the question of whether this individual should remain in the Oval Office genuinely urgent rather than theoretical. And here resides the political reality binding all of this together heading toward the midterm elections. These document scandals are landing atop everything else already damaging the Republican Party in the suburban districts that determine electoral outcomes. The tariff ruling, the special election catastrophe, the impeachment articles, the admiral's critique of Iran strategy, the civilization-level threats, and now the business motive memorandum and the Epstein document suppression. Each element adds to a portrait that suburban voters, college-educated professionals who value institutions and accountability and the rule of law will evaluate when determining whether to cast Republican ballots. And the cumulative weight of all of it, a president whose classified document conduct prosecutors described as motivated by personal business enrichment, whose Justice Department stands accused of suppressing evidence of abuse allegations involving a minor, whose Iran conflict generates war crimes concerns and impeachment articles, whose economic policy his own Supreme Court ruled unconstitutional, constitutes a political burden that no quantity of messaging campaigns and no number of rallies can offset in districts already swinging 31 points toward Democrats. The business motive memorandum represents the most damaging written statement regarding Trump's classified documents conduct ever made public, and it now resides permanently in the congressional record. Jack Smith's team documented in an official prosecutorial instrument that they possessed proof beyond a reasonable doubt that Trump retained classified documents because they were pertinent to his business interests. That statement transforms the classified document narrative from a records disagreement into a corruption of national security narrative. It is not about careless packing or good faith disagreements regarding declassification procedures. It concerns a former president treating national security secrets as private business assets, retaining some of the most sensitive intelligence the United States government possesses at a golf resort because the information contained in those documents proved useful to his private empire. That conduct, if established at trial or confirmed through congressional proceedings, represents not merely a crime, but a fundamental betrayal of the public trust the presidency is supposed to embody. The Epstein document suppression allegation, if substantiated, reveals a Justice Department weaponized to protect one individual from accountability for alleged conduct involving a minor, and that constitutes a moral and institutional crisis transcending partisan politics. Representative Garcia's specific claim that more than 50 pages of FBI interviews containing abuse allegations are missing from a promised comprehensive release is an official congressional allegation attached to specific documentary evidence in the form of the Archive Manifest. The oversight investigation now proceeding is designed to determine whether the suppression was intentional, who made the determination, and on whose instruction. Those questions can be answered. They will generate subpoenas and testimony and document demands. And the answers, when they arrive, will define how history evaluates the conduct of this Justice Department and those who directed it. The connection between the two document scandals and between both of them and the broader Department of Justice cover-up pattern constitutes the most significant institutional narrative in Washington at this moment. The same Justice Department that accidentally handed Congress the business motive memorandum while attempting to attack Jack Smith is also accused of deliberately withholding Epstein pages containing abuse allegations against Trump. That is one institution making document determinations on two separate matters, in both instances in configurations that protect Trump from accountability. That pattern of an institution converted from a guardian of the rule of law into a political protection operation is what the removal demands ultimately address, because a democracy cannot function when the institution responsible for legal accountability has been captured by the individual it is supposed to hold accountable. And the documentary evidence now in congressional possession suggests that capture has occurred and that its consequences manifest in the specific document determinations now under congressional scrutiny. The removal demands are not merely political noise. They represent a logical response to a specific and documented constellation of facts, and they will intensify as the oversight investigations produce additional information. The members demanding immediate removal are not simply expressing outrage. They are advancing a specific argument that a president who retained national security secrets for personal business enrichment, whose Justice Department is suppressing evidence of abuse allegations involving a minor, and who is simultaneously conducting an unauthorized conflict with civilization-level threats, represents a combination of national security vulnerability, moral unfitness, and legal exposure that renders the normal timeline of accountability processes inadequate. That argument will amplify as the oversight investigations advance, as additional documents surface, as more witnesses testify, as additional elements of the cover-up pattern receive documentation and enter the record. And in a political environment where Republican members already seek cover to distance themselves from an administration losing on every front simultaneously, the cumulative weight of the document revelations will render that distancing more urgent and more politically necessary with each passing week. Here is the fundamental reality. Jack Smith's accidentally released progress memorandum states Trump retained classified documents pertinent to his business interests with proof beyond a reasonable doubt, including a file so sensitive that only 6 officials were ever cleared to view it. Representative Garcia states the Department of Justice withheld more than 50 pages of Epstein FBI interviews containing abuse allegations against Trump, despite a manifest confirming those pages exist. Representative Raskin states the memorandum was accidentally delivered by Trump's own Department of Justice allies who were attempting to protect him and instead handed Congress damning evidence of his conduct. The same institution, the same pattern, 2 separate document categories, both protecting the same individual, both now under congressional scrutiny, both generating demands for accountability moving faster than the White House can counter. The hidden documents have imploded, not in a single dramatic instant, but in the steady and accelerating manner that cover-ups implode when the documents begin surfacing, despite the most determined efforts to keep them buried. What comes next will not be contained to closed-door hearings and carefully worded statements. The documents are out. The questions are unavoidable, and the demands for removal are only beginning.